going on, everyone? Print, shoot, repeat here, back with another video. I have been wondering for a long time, can you stipple PLA Plus or PLA, the printing material that most of us use to 3D print firearms? I've wanted to know this for a while because I've always been really into stippling, and I've done some of my own, PMags, things like that. This is a stippled PMag that I did. It's just fun. I like customizing my gear, and one of the ways you can customize your gear is to stipple it and create your own patterns. You can choose what works best for you and your setup. If you don't know what stippling is, which maybe some of you don't, it's when you resurface plastic, or I suppose you could technically do it with wood, but it's when you resurface plastic to give it a pattern that gives you a bit better of a grip, or it just gives it a little bit more of an abrasive surface texture. The way you do this is you use you can use a soldering iron, or you can use a wood burner, and those tools come with tips that you use to physically take the burner and touch it to the plastic, which makes it melt, and as a result creates a raised level of plastic that comes above the rest of the smooth stuff. This is just an extra A2 grip that I had. This is not anything I 3D printed. This is an example of just what some kind of snakeskin style stippling might look like. These are like $1.50 or $2 or something. You can find them anywhere. They're a dime a dozen. I just had it lying around because I replaced the grip and thought, oh, let's try this. So here's an example of what it looks like. Most people stipple. Majority of stippling probably happens on like a Glock frame. People usually send their stuff in to get worked on. And given that I'm 3D printing things, I was curious, can PLA hold up to a soldering iron or a wood burner? So that's what we're going to try to find out today. I've got my Weller wood burner. This is a pretty good, solid wood burner. It's like $30 or something at your local hardware store. You can usually find them. They come with a set of tips. The tips that they come with are decent. You can get some cool patterns just by using the basic tips, like this guy. Or there's even some more kind of checkered kind of tips here. Or you can just go with a straight, like, needle nose kind of tip. It's just like a rounded point there. But since I like to get a little bit freaky with my stuff, I went out and I bought a set of custom stippling tips that are meant for use with firearms or things you're going to be gripping with your hands that are aesthetically just a little bit different. So I got these from a company called OT Defense. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I'm just recommending them because they make good stuff. These tips are, as you can see, a little bit more. I got a bunch of different patterns here. I'm going to show you. So this one's like a little bit of a triangle tip. This one, I think this one's my favorite. This is like a kind of a rectangle. I haven't tried all of them yet, but I want to. This has got like this triangular pattern. This is just your normal, but a little bit fatter than normal front tip. Just this is like a thinner wedge, diamond, like a figure 8 type thing. So there's a lot you can do here, like an oval. So what we're going to do today, so what we're going to do today is we're going to see how PLA Plus, specifically eSun PLA Plus. Actually, I think I have one little test print that we could use that tests atomic enhanced PLA. And we're going to see how it holds up to the wood burner and with using stippling techniques that you'd normally use on some like glass reinforced polymer, or like you would see in a Glock frame or a mag. I mean, these mags are not exactly the same as like a Glock frame, but relatively similar in the same ballpark. I have tried this before, so this is not a blind test, but I do want to do some more testing, and I do want to try stippling this Are We Cool Yet E43X pistol frame that I printed. I've done some prep work and sanded it and smoothed it out, which is what you want to do if you're stippling anything, to be honest. If you're stippling a Glock frame, there are thousands of videos on YouTube about how to stipple stuff, so this is more specifically applying to 3D printed stuff. But if you want to know the techniques around stippling, just Google it, because there's so much information and valuable information that probably I can't really give you because I'm not an expert on stippling. But since no one I could find has really done this kind of a video on YouTube, I thought I'd say, why not do it? Because I think there's going to be more and more people that are 3D printing pistol frames and firearms, and even this could apply to grips too, or whatever you want to do. So it's really, the world is your oyster. So I wanted to show you an example of something that I had printed another Are We Cool Yet frame before, and as you can see, I've gone and, so this frame I actually, embarrassingly enough, I flipped the print and I printed it backwards. You can see everything's reversed. So I thought, well, this is going to be a good opportunity to use this as a test for some PLA stippling. So what I did was I took that sprinkle kind of style tip that I got from OT Defense and used that as my first attempt to stipple. And this, obviously I'm not going to use this frame, so I really went ham. You don't really want to go this hard with the stippling in terms of putting it all the way up here. I mean, you could, I guess, theoretically, but that's not really how I would do it. But I just wanted to utilize the space, so I did a few different tips and patterns. What I noticed on this particular frame, and it's probably different with every frame, but this particular frame is pretty thin in this area right where this indent is. And it may not be the best move to stipple that at all. So if you want to look right over here, this is the one I'll be stippling. If you hold a light like behind it, you can see the light through the PLA. It's pretty thin. And so I did want to see, okay, well, if I do stipple it, how will it hold up? And it really held up all right. There's a little bit of an indent there. I wouldn't do it personally. I wouldn't stipple really thin areas of your frame if there are any. And there's a pretty thin area right here. It's interesting, structurally, I was initially thinking, is this going to reduce the durability and the structural integrity of the frame by stippling it? But then I kind of came to the conclusion that the more you heat up PLA and the line, the filament can bond together more at a high temperature, probably the better off it is as far as structural integrity. Now, I'm not an expert on these things, but that's my guess. If people do anneal and heat up these PLA and stuff in the oven at a low temperature to strengthen the prints afterwards. So it's very well possible that doing some stippling may not actually take away from the structural integrity, but enhance it. But don't quote me on that. So what I learned here was it really doesn't, PLA, I don't think it really likes to be pushed hard, just like any polymer, but especially PLA. It's pretty soft. And so when you're stippling it, you got to be really gentle and you got to be quick. Like your indents, every time you push in, you could take as much time as you want between times you press, but when you go in, definitely make that short, because this stuff melts a little bit faster and with less pressure than, well, a lot less pressure than something like the PMag that I stippled or this A2 grip. I was giving it a good amount of pressure every time I put one of these indents in there. Not the case with this. And what I also noticed too, and I don't know if it's going to pick it up on the camera really, but some of the times when I really kind of pushed in hard, it burned the PLA to the point where it looks like it's like a little discolored. And I'm sure it probably wouldn't show up as much with a black PLA, but it's kind of got this like dirty, yellowy, not so attractive look to it. And so I noticed that some of the stuff that I did lighter, like I didn't do it as intensely, it didn't make that color discoloration. So you really want to take it pretty easy when you're doing this. You want to be very gentle and not push too hard, and definitely don't push for very long. So the best way to do this, I would say, is don't start on the Glock frame or the pistol frame or any parts that you plan to use on your firearm as like a first test. Definitely take some old failed prints or some test prints and practice on those. So that's what we're going to do to start, is we're going to start by practicing on some old test prints that I have, all in PLA Plus and enhanced PLA. So this is actually a test cube that I did with Atomic PLA, which I'm doing some printing with now, and it's been great so far. I haven't shot anything out of it with it. I haven't tested it yet as far as strength with test firing and things like that, but this is PLA Plus, and then this is Atomic Enhanced PLA. So maybe we'll start with both of these and see how they each behave. But I've got a bunch more PLA Plus failed prints that these are some 1911 grips that didn't turn out so great. So I'm going to try doing some stippling here, and we're going to try some different patterns, and hopefully you all can get a good idea of what you might do if you try this. So let's get into it. All right, so before you get into it, you want to definitely be wearing gloves, something that can handle some heat, and you want to be wearing a respirator, and you want to have a fan going if you can, and wear eye protection. Okay, so when you're stippling, you want to go from the top, not the side or at an angle. It's best, it's like you're putting in a stamp. I started with the hexagon tip just to have a go at it. You just want to be really, really, really brief and light in your application. Here, you can see here I did a little bit too light and then I did too much. So you can see that kind of sticks out a little bit. And it's better, I would say, if you do a light stamp than just leave it alone, because it's most likely going to blend in. But when you do one too much, it's kind of easier to see the screw up. Here is just like a very thin kind of line tip. I'm doing kind of like a sun pattern from the middle. Just really, really light. The PLA is so soft and melts very easily. And yeah, just continuing on with this. You can really do whatever you want, honestly. There's no rules to this. But I'd seen on some grip something similar to this design where it came out from the middle. I think it's kind of something that people do, so I just thought I'd give it a shot, see what it looked like. Yep, that looks kind of cool. Okay, so this is exactly what you don't want to do. I'm pushing this, well, not as hard as I can, but you can really see that material, the PLA, is just boiling. That is far too deep, and you will probably go through your frame if you do this. But I wanted to show you what it looks like. It's kind of satisfying to watch, actually. Yeah, it's just oozing. And lots of smoke. Yeah, that's not so good. Alright, so here I wanted to do a comparison of the hexagon and another tip, and so I just did a little pattern to see what it would look like. A lot of the important part of stippling is just kind of getting these close to each other enough so they kind of just blend in. You want them to be kind of overlapping each other to get that nice kind of texture. So this is like a triangle grip, and I'm trying to figure out how I want it to be oriented. And so I just decided I would go with this orientation, then I stuck with that for the rest of the pattern. And I actually really like this triangle pattern, so I decided I'm going to use this for my E43X frame, this tip. One of the things you can do when you stipple is you can make borders, and they usually look really nice on polymer frames. And you can do it one of a few different ways, but this is one way people do it, is they'll take a Dremel and they'll cut out the borders with it, and that did not work with PLA. I do not recommend doing it. I wanted to see if it would work though. And then I continued to practice how to do this particular tip, and this tip, I thought I got the hang of it, and when I was ready, I started. The area which you're gonna stipple, you want to outline, so I took a ruler, pencil, and just marked where I wanted it to be on the grip. I decided to go with these little kind of lower part where your finger really touches the frame on both sides, and your palm and your fingers. And there's no rush at all. I find myself sometimes rushing it just because I want to just like stay steady with it. And sometimes it is important to have rhythm with it, because then you kind of just get into this zone where you're just going one after another. I sometimes count how many I'm doing. And another thing is you don't want to get too close to that magazine release area, because if you go over the edge, you could risk melting a piece of the PLA and then having it dry, kind of an overhang, and then prevent the mag from going in there, mag release. But you could just always file it down, but I, in general, just keep a decent space. And you can do that with pencil, so you can remind yourself. Oh yeah, and then if you miss one or you need to fill one in on the border, it's not that hard. You just kind of fit it in with the rest of the lines. You can see at the top here, I kind of went over it twice and messed the pattern up a little bit, but it's really hard to tell unless you get really close. But then I got the hang of it. And yeah, like I said, this is a great place to practice. Even if you mess up, it's like, well, print another frame. What, it's like 18 hours, whatever. You definitely can't order Glock frames in 18 hours, let alone at all, really. So, and I fast forwarded it for you just so you don't have to wait forever, but this is what one side looks like after it's been stippled. Kind of got a scaly look to it. All right, so we have our finished E43X Are We Cool Yet frame. This is how it turned out. I think this is pretty much done. I think it came out, as far as conclusions around stippling this frame in particular, I think it came out all right for my first attempt. Like I said in the intro, I didn't really want to mess with this circle part because it's so thin. But other than that, I think I got the pattern all right. That's not perfect, but I think I tried to stay within the lines as much as I could. The only issue that I ran into was in the back here that I'm not super proud of is this part, but it's mainly because, well, the reason why is because there's that embossed the other SIG logo on there. And I suppose if you were nice at, or just had some basic CAD design skills, you could get rid of that, because they do give out the step files and whatnot. But yeah, it was hard. So that's a lesson in stippling, not necessarily PLA stippling, but any kind of stippling. You want to get a smooth surface as possible to get the best results. But that's how it turned out. I did stipple the under part of the trigger guard, and I stippled here. Let's see if we can get a better look here. Stippled this part. And this little gas pedal thumb rest pot on both sides. Now it took me about, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. It was harder to do when I had the camera in my way, but once I got the camera out of my way, it got a little bit better on this side. I like this pattern. As far as the feel of this, it's not quite as aggressive in your hand as like a normal polymer frame of a normal pistol. It's got a little bit more of a smoothness to it, but this definitely added a good amount of texturing. This feels way better than the one that I practiced on. I think I'd over pressed it too hard on that one, but this was just right. Almost dropped it again. I'll probably do we'll do like some kind of a stress test on this thing, and I don't know, try to break it, but in the future. But for right now, yeah, that's how she came out. And yes, you can definitely stipple PLA. You just got to be a little bit careful. It's definitely softer than your other traditional polymers that you might find on a pistol grip like this that wasn't 3D printed. But I'd say overall this was a success. What's underneath is going to be a glossy kind of finish though. So if you're trying to make your frame as tactical as possible and not reflect any light, you might want to go over this with some enamel, some spray paint or whatever. I was thinking it would be cool, which I may try in the future, it would be cool to spray it before stippling and then stipple, so you kind of had a two-tone look, which I think would be cool. And I wonder if PLA, I assume it would be like a normal plastic that would work. But yeah, that is a little info and small tutorial on how to stipple a 3D printed pistol frame or pistol grip, or really any kind of 3D printed PLA material. Some other patterns that we did here. These tips are awesome. Like I said, it's OT Defense Stipple Tech. It's the brand. This is not how you want to do it. This is an example of going too far on the stippling. But that's just right. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of a butthole, unfortunately. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Anyway, it's been print, shoot, repeat. I'll catch you next time. Peace.